All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're going deep on something big. The U.S. and China. This whole idea of miscalculations about China, we're going to break it down with the help of your sources, of course.
Yeah, we got a whole bunch of stuff to dig through this time. We've got a video that gets into China's influence right here in the U.S., and then we've got this in-depth analysis on why so many people are calling China, well, let's just say a major threat.
Okay, so this video, it's pretty intense, right? It's like they're saying we're already in a silent war. They even use the word spy a bunch. I was almost waiting for them to show like a guy in a trench coat sneaking around a cornfield in Iowa or something.
Well, that actually connects to something the video talks about right away. It's about China trying to control important resources. And it's not just about military stuff anymore. They're playing the long game. Looking at everything from food to medicine. The video talks about this story of Chinese spies trying to steal farming secrets in South Dakota. It shows how they're trying to control important stuff.
Okay, so China's a big player, no doubt about that. But the other source, the analysis, it takes a different angle, doesn't it? It's not just about spies. It lays out all these reasons why the U.S. is worried about China.
Right. It talks about this clash of ideas like democracy versus, authoritarianism. Two totally different ways of running a country. And that's going to cause problems, especially on a global level. And then there's the economic side of things. China is using stuff like the Belt and Road Initiative, that huge project to build infrastructure all over the place. They're trying to get a real grip on the global economy.
It's like they're playing a giant game of Risk, just gobbling up continents. But here's the thing that's been bugging me. If China's been making these moves for a while, was the U.S. just asleep at the wheel? Did we miss something?
Well, the analysis talks about why the U.S. might have been slow to react. First off, after the Cold War ended, the U.S. was kind of busy, dealing with terrorism, globalization, all that. Maybe there was some hope that as China's economy grew, they'd become more democratic.
Yeah, the whole, if we trade with them, they'll be just like us idea didn't quite work out that way. But let's be honest, someone had to make all those iPhones, right? The U.S. probably didn't want to mess things up with China while all that was going on.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. The analysis calls it economic entanglement. Going after China could have hurt both of our economies. And then there's a whole political situation in the U.S. Different presidents, different priorities. And let's face it, a lot of gridlock. It's tough to come up with a solid plan for dealing with China when your own country can't agree on anything.
Okay, that makes sense. But then the video drops this bomb. They say 88% of pharmaceuticals come from China. That's like all our medicine. What happens if things go bad?
It's a big risk, no doubt. The analysis talks about that, too. Relying on a potential enemy for important stuff is risky. It makes you wonder about whether we should be making more things ourselves.
Yeah, suddenly Buy American isn't just a slogan anymore. It's about national security.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got China's ambitions, the U.S. maybe not doing so great at responding, and a whole lot of reliance on Chinese goods. Where to go from here?
Well, the video doesn't hold back on what they think the next battleground is, cyberspace. And let me tell you, it gets kind of scary. They're talking about everything from hidden backdoors in our tech to China shutting down the U.S. internet.
Hold on, are you saying Xi Jinping knows what I'm watching on YouTube? That's both amazing and terrifying?
Well, the point is, China's really good at cyber stuff. Even the experts in the video are worried. They talk about how vulnerable our phones, our power grids, all that stuff is.
So not just my YouTube history then. Maybe the whole country's lights could go out because of some computer code. Maybe those old dial-up modems weren't so bad after all.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. Both the video and the analysis say we need to step up our cybersecurity game. We need to be less reliant on tech that could be compromised. Basically, we need to get our digital house in order.
All right, so we've got spies on farms, global economic domination, and cyber warfare straight out of a sci-fi movie. And then there's Taiwan. This little island is right in the middle of everything. What makes it so important?
Well, for one thing, it's in a really strategic spot. Imagine this. Taiwan sits right in what's called the first island chain. This line of islands basically controls the major shipping routes in the Pacific, control Taiwan, and you control a lot of what goes on in that region.
It's like owning Boardwalk and Park Place and Monopoly.
But with real-world consequences. But it's more than just location, right? Taiwan's a tech powerhouse. They make all those tiny computer chips that run our lives, right? Taiwan is the world leader in semiconductor production. Remember that global chip shortage a few years back? That showed just how much we depend on Taiwan for those little chips. The U.S. wants to protect that for economic reasons and because Taiwan's a democracy. It's a direct challenge to China's model.
Okay, so we've got strategic location, tech dominance, and a clash of ideologies. No wonder Taiwan's such a hotspot. The video even has some U.S. officials saying that what happens to Taiwan will decide the future of democracy in the whole region. Talk about pressure.
It shows how important this whole U.S.-China thing is. Taiwan is a potential trigger. If things escalate there, it could have huge consequences for the whole world.
Right, so we've got China's ambitions, the U.S. maybe not reacting perfectly, cyber battles, and Taiwan is a potential powder keg. What does all this mean for the future? What's next for the U.S. and China?
That, my friend, is the big question, and it's a question we'll start to unpack in the next part of our deep dive. Stay tuned. You know, back in the Cold War, the U.S. had this strategy, right? Containment, keeping the Soviet Union in check.
Yeah, it was like two different worlds back then, East versus West.
Right, but with China, it's completely different.
Yeah, our economies are all mixed up now.
Exactly. It's like, how do you separate them?
It's like trying to untangle a bunch of headphones that have been in your pocket for too long.
Perfect analogy. It makes it so tough to come up with a plan.
So what do? Is there some kind of middle ground?
Well, that's what policymakers are trying to figure out. Some people say we need to be tougher, you know, stronger alliances, more military power, play hardball on trade.
Gotcha, tough.
But others are saying, hey, let's talk more, try to cooperate, while still dealing with the problems, of course.
Okay, so like a good cop, bad cop routine.
Kind of, but picking the right approach at the right time is crucial.
This video, it's definitely leaning towards the bad cop side.
Yeah, they're really focused on those potential conflicts, especially in cyberspace.
Speaking of cyberspace, that whole cyber warfare thing is pretty freaky.
It is. The video talks about Chinese hackers getting into everything. Governments, companies, stealing secrets, even messing with power grids and stuff.
Seriously? So my online banking info isn't safe? Maybe I should go back to hiding cash under my mattress and get a flip phone while I'm at it.
Okay, maybe not that extreme. But it shows how real cyber attacks are, and not just from China. We all need to be more careful, use strong passwords, be aware.
Got it. Become a digital ninja.
Basically.
Okay, back to China for a sec. The analysis really focused on Taiwan, right? It's like this tiny island could set everything off.
Absolutely. Taiwan is a huge flashpoint. China wants to take it, even if they have to use force. And the U.S. has said they'll defend Taiwan.
It's like a standoff. Nobody wants to blink.
Exactly. One wrong move could have huge consequences.
And speaking of wrong moves, the video really calls out the U.S. for being naive about China's ambitions.
Yeah, there were definitely some missteps. Maybe we thought economic ties would make China more democratic, but they've gone their own way, and now the U.S. is scrambling to catch up.
It's like we walked into a poker game thinking it was for fun, and then realized we're playing against pros.
Great analogy. We need a new strategy, one that understands the reality of the situation.
Okay, so we've got this high-stakes poker game, cyber battles, and Taiwan as the wild card. What happens next? Can the U.S. and China figure out how to get along without trying to one-up each other all the time?
That's the million-dollar question, and both the video and the analysis try to answer it. They look at different possibilities, but one thing's clear. The U.S. and China have to manage this rivalry responsibly.
So not a Wild West shootout, more like a chess match.
Exactly. Setting clear boundaries, finding things we agree on, trying to build a more stable relationship.
But is that even possible? The video makes it sound like we're headed for a clash, like two trains on the same track.
There are big differences between the U.S. and China, and those won't disappear overnight. But the video and the analysis also point to some areas where we could work together.
Really?
Yeah.
Work together? I thought we were talking about a new Cold War.
Remember those global issues we talked about? Climate change, pandemics.
Yeah, those are pretty important.
Exactly. Those are things that affect everyone, and the U.S. and China can't solve them alone.
So even though they might fight over trade or military stuff, they still need to cooperate on saving the planet.
Right. And that's where we might see some progress, building bridges instead of walls.
Okay, so maybe it's not all doom and gloom. Maybe there's a chance for these two giants to work together sometimes. Like a little competition, a little cooperation.
Exactly. It shows that the future isn't set in stone. It depends on the choices both sides make, and not just governments.
So where do we, the regular people, fit into all of this? If it's not just up to the governments, what can we do?
That's a great question, and it's one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
I just want to give another shout out to Micky from Mickytolife. His channel is a treasure trove of inspiration, and he's a huge Sip&Talk fan.
Absolutely. Make sure to check him out and maybe even share your awesome podcast intro with him once you've created it.
All right, so we've been talking about the U.S. and China, these global powerhouses, but let's bring it down to earth for a sec. What does all this mean for regular people, like us?
That's a question we should be asking more often. We get caught up in the big picture stuff, governments, armies, trade deals, but the U.S.-China relationship, it affects us in so many ways.
I mean, I get it. My phone's probably made in China, the clothes I'm wearing, maybe even some of the food I eat. But beyond that stuff, how does this rivalry really affect us?
Well, think about jobs. The U.S. and China are competing in tech, manufacturing, all these industries. That affects where jobs are, what companies are doing well, even what kind of careers people can have.
Right. So it's not just some abstract thing.
It's about people's lives, their livelihoods.
What about education?
Yeah, that's another area where it's playing out. There's this competition for talent, getting the best students, the best researchers. Universities are becoming like battlegrounds for innovation.
So it's not just on battlefields or in boardrooms, it's in classrooms too. Everyone's trying to get ahead. But here's a thought. What if instead of always trying to beat each other, the U.S. and China work together? I know it sounds crazy after all this talk about rivalry and conflict, but could it actually happen?
It's not as crazy as it sounds. Both the video and the analysis mention some areas where they could cooperate.
Okay, so are we talking like a U.S.-China science fair or something?
Not exactly, but remember those global challenges we talked about?
Climate change, pandemics.
Yeah. Those are things they can't ignore no matter what else is going on.
Right. Melting ice caps and global viruses don't care about politics.
Exactly. And that's where they might find some common ground. It's not about pretending everything's perfect, but recognizing that sometimes you got to team up for the greater good.
So maybe it's not all black and white. Maybe they can be rivals sometimes and partners other times.
Yeah, like a frenemy situation, but on a global scale.
Okay, so back to my original question. Where do we, the average folks, fit into all this? What can we actually do to make a difference?
First off, we can stay informed. Don't just read the headlines. Go deeper, understand the issues. The more we know, the better choices we can make.
Choices like what? Should I only buy American stuff? Boycott Chinese goods?
It's not about those kinds of extremes. It's about being a conscious consumer, supporting companies that do things right. It's about talking to each other, learning about different perspectives, trying to understand each other better.
So less about economic warfare and more about building connections.
Exactly. Recognizing that we're all connected somehow. Even small actions can make a difference.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. Spies on farms, cyber battles, global economic dominance, Taiwan, all of it. We've talked about the challenges, the risks of conflict, but also maybe some hope for a better future.
And we've seen that this isn't just a story about governments and superpowers. It's a story that affects all of us, and we all have a role to play.
So deep divers, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the whole U.S.-China situation. It's a topic that's not going away anytime soon. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
The future isn't set in stone. It's up to all of us to shape it.
Well said. Now, before we go, we want to recommend a YouTube channel for you guys. If you're like us, you need a little break after all this serious stuff. Check out Mickytolife for some travel inspiration, fun drinks, and good vibes.
It's a great way to see the world without leaving your couch.
Until next time, keep divers, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep learning.
The world's a fascinating place. Embrace the journey.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Catch you next time.